Today on the Mr. Maple podcast, Matt and Tim count down the top 50 pink maples, numbers 25 through 1.
Hey guys, welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Matt. We're back this week and we're diving in to the top 25 pink Japanese maples.
Guys, last week we went 50 through number 26. So if you hadn't went and heard that one yet, go listen to that podcast first, and then you can jump into today's, which is 25 through number 1 of the top pink maples. Now, some of these are Japanese maples, and some of these, when we're getting down to the top 25, are not Japanese maples. Some of these are other maples as well. We got some really cool ones for you today. Guys, if you don't know us, I'm Tim. That's my brother, Matt. And we're the brothers at MrMaple.com. We do over 1,000 varieties of Japanese maples. We ship directly to your door. And guys, we add 10 new cool plants to our website every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you go check that out.
Now, if you're listening to this, you're definitely finding us on one platform, but we may be on multiple things. So we actually load these to all major podcast platforms. And if you're listening to us there, be sure to give us a 5-star review. It helps people find us. We're on all major platforms under the name Mr. Maple Show. We're actually on YouTube as well, and we air these podcast episodes every single Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'd love to see you in that live chat.
So pink. Pink is the color of passion.
Yeah, Tim said it was compassion. The last person you ever want to ask about song lyrics is Tim. So we've got it straightened out here on the Aerosmith. I guess they're big fans of pink. We're going to be breaking down our favorite pink trees that are Japanese maples. You know, I've had people love pink trees. I had a customer saved in my phone as just pink trees because they would call up and I had to think of all my favorite pink trees off the top of my head. That's all they wanted. They called up and said, "Hey, I'm ready for pink trees." So I had them saved in there every time they called us pink trees.
Well, now you're going to have a list 50 through number 1.
Right.
And you can say, hey, here's 50 pink trees you should get from us.
You know, go listen to the podcast. Save us some time. So guys, there's some amazing trees on this list. Obviously, if we're breaking down the top pink Japanese maples and maples, we're going to have some of the flashiest stuff out there. So that's what we're doing on this list. Now, we do have a few trees that didn't make the top 25. We did give them special honorable mention. The first of those is Acer Palmatum Pinky. Now, Pinky is a sport off of Macawi Etsubusa. We did have one. We had a little mishap here at the nursery where the graft got broken off. The trick on this one is it has to be, it's so pink and white that it has to be on a rootstock to feed it. So the rootstock was confused for the graft and somebody broke off what they thought were shoots coming out from below the graft, but it was actually the cultivar. So a little bit of a tricky one there because it actually does require a symbiotic relationship with a green tree to feed it because it doesn't have enough chlorophyll in it. So it didn't make our list.
Yeah, and actually when I was talking with Talon Buchholz, they had a similar mishap with some of the pinkies they were trying to get in production at their nursery. And it appears to be a common thing when you have to leave the rootstock on, which is green parts that are growing up from below the graft to feed the actual graft. But pinky is such a cool plant with that pink leaf, almost no green to it at all, and on that Macawi Etsubusa form.
Now, it does have a happy ending. Talon did send us another sport, just like Pinky, unnamed, on a Macawi Etsubusa seedling. So we'll be evaluating that one and naming it here at our nursery eventually and getting it grafted. It may require a feeder rootstock. It's yet to be seen. We'll be playing around with that one. We'll be testing it on some different things. I'd like to play around grafting in some like Ryusen styles and some Makawa styles, and maybe we can stabilize that. We'll see what's going on there. It's still yet to be seen, but there is a happy ending to that story as we have another form in the works.
Now that small, it was probably in a 2-gallon.
Mm-hmm.
Talon told me that particular tree was over 10 years old. He said that's been around the nursery at least 10 years.
Wow.
And it's
really cool to just pass that on to us to work with.
And it's still such a small tree. That's pretty cool. That's really awesome that he passed that along for us to try to get into production. I was real excited about that one.
Now, our other honorable mention is Acer Palmatum Taylor. We don't offer it frequently here at our nursery. We did have some that we had people pick up in person here at our last open house last spring. We always let people know that Taylor can be kind of a finicky tree. It's beautiful. It's got a lot of pink going on. kind of a sport on butterfly. And because of that, it's a little bit more exaggerated, but it does get to be a little bit more finicky than others. Gorgeous tree, but didn't make our list because it can be a little less durable than some.
Yeah, in the South, I think it might be our humidity with Taylor that it doesn't prefer. It may do better in the Pacific Northwest or in more of a greenhouse setting. But for us in the deep South, it doesn't do so well for us, but still an amazingly pink tree as well. Now, guys, we're going to break into that top 25. We've got 25 awesomely pink trees coming at you today. And number 25, we've got Acer pseudoplatness Esk Sunset.
Wait, is that Eskimo sunset?
No, Matt, that's Esk Sunset.
All right. It's always one that people try to put Eskimo sunset on. People love to mess with the name on this one. I don't know if somebody was trying to get clever with the marketing or if they just looked at this and thought, I wonder what Esk is an abbreviation for, and then just made it Eskimo. It's actually from the Esk Valley in New Zealand. So there's an Esk nursery there that named this tree. And it is a beautiful example of pink, not only on the top of the leaf, but also on the bottom.
Yeah. And like Matt mentioned, Esk Sunset, we often say that's the cultivar name, but because so many people have put it incorrectly, we often put Eskimo Sunset on our website as a common name so people understand they're the same plant. And that's just trying to make sure that we're helping people get to that Esk Sunset as the real name. But this plant is amazing. The pink purple gets on the bottom of the side of the leaf is my favorite pink thing about this tree. As this tree gets into a large tree and you can look up into the tree, it's a whole new appreciation for this tree, especially of how pink purple it is underneath the leaf.
Yeah, you get some interesting swirling going on the top. There's definitely some pink shades to the top of the tree as well. It's a variegated mix of pink and green and white. And it's a real creamy white mixed with the pink. It's a beautiful coloration on top. It's definitely fun when the wind's hitting that tree and you kind of get that underside of the leaf waving at you a little bit too, because it throws a lot more pink into the mix there. Really showy plant, and one we can't do enough of here. That's Esk Sunset. All right, guys, coming in here at number 24, we've got Acer Palmatum Strawberry Spring.
Guys, Strawberry Spring is one of those new introductions by Talon buckholts. We often consider it a new ghost. And by that term, we mean it has that reticulated variegation where you see the veins of the leaf, similar to that of the Ghost series that Talon buckholts introduced. But this is a selection that he introduced later after he quit putting the term ghost on all of his reticulated styles of Japanese maples. But Strawberry Spring, it has one of the craziest strawberry pinks of any of the Japanese maples. There's not another Japanese maple that goes to this bright shade of pink that's not really doesn't have red to it at all. It's more in that true pink color. I mean, it is outstanding.
Yeah, we love this. I mean, it's a Japanese maple talk show, so we like to make those comparisons with other Japanese maples often to try to give collectors a better understanding of this one. I kind of like to think of this one as Olson's Frosted Strawberry if you blended it with Amber Ghost, because it's got lighter tones, it's brighter pink. It's got some of the tones you see in Amber Ghost early, but it's got more of the pink. So it's a softer overall pink shade, but it's kind of somewhere in between those two.
Now, Strawberry Spring, the pink on it is outstanding. It is phenomenal, but it is one that the pink on it doesn't last as long as some of the others. And that's the reason why it's down here at number 24, because that pink on there, it lasts for maybe a month and then it goes to a cream. And that cream color is really awesome with the reticulated variegation. We have a cream with a lime green reticulated variegation in there. It's outstanding. But Talon was like, this plant is pretty awesome. And he'd called me and was talking to me about some of his plants. And he's like, this plant, Strawberry Spring, I'm going to send you one. And Matt and I, we were freaking out about it when we got this thing in the mail. I mean, we opened up the box and Strawberry Spring really was a game changer because the spring color on it is unreal. It's a really special plant. And if you put it out there with your Desojos, your Katsuras, and a lot of these plants, it's going to give you some amazing spring interest out there in the landscape and garden and a true pink that you can't go wrong with. I mean, that pink color just is so dynamically different from every other thing in the landscape that as a tree, this tree is going to look crazy.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of what this one does. Again, this one's going to work zones 5 through 9 and a growth rate at around 6 to 8 feet, even in 10 years. So nice looking tree, really goes out and pairs well with any of the Ghost series, but I'm a huge fan. Works well with any of your Japanese maples, and it really brings a lot of nice pink to the garden.
I remember reading through our notes of the Talon Buchholz podcast, where we go through and do Talon Buchholz's top 50 introductions. And Guy Malot of France, two of his favorites of Talon's new introductions was the Strawberry Spring and the Celebration. So, I mean, you've got multiple nurserymen all around the world saying this tree is pretty awesome. It's going to be pretty special.
All right, coming in here at number 23, guys, we've got Mama Fu.
Guys, Mama Fu is an introduction by Jonathan Savlich, introduced by Del Laux Nursery. This is the same guy who brought us Lillian's Jewel. Fu is a term that means variegation, and Mama often means like different, so you get different style foliage. Mama Fu leaves out in the spring as completely pink. And then as that plant matures, you start to get more of that Beni Shishihinga style variegation into it. And so this is a really cool introduction from Junction City, Oregon. And this plant just gives some amazing pink colors. I mean, almost every single leaf on this thing when it first leaves out is solid pink.
Yeah. Now, if we were putting a disqualifier of, from 30 feet away, what looks the most pink, this may be the winner. It definitely shows out with that high pink intensity at a distance. I like to think of it as a more exaggerated form of that Beni Shishihinga. Like, it's got the pink of Beni Shishihinga, but maybe even turned up a couple notches.
Yeah, I mean, those notches are pretty high too, because this one is super pink. Beni Shishihinga was on our last list. If anyone hadn't listened to it yet, it came in at number 26, 23 with Mama Fu. The reason why this one's on here so high is because it is way more pink in the early spring than Beni Shishihinga. And it appears to be fairly stable too in its variegation. This style of variegation, though, if you ever do see any solid green shoots coming on, make sure to trim those off and avoid fertilizing these butterfly Beni Shishihinga types with high amounts of nitrogen, because that can actually force the plant to revert.
Oftentimes, this would be my suggestion if somebody's looking for a Taylor. And, I'm looking for an alternative to Taylor, but that's going to give them a similar aesthetic, but maybe be a little bit more durable. Mama Fu could be a great choice for that.
So guys, coming in at number 22, we've got Eye Candy. This is another selection by Talon Buchholz. It was found as a chance seedling from Alpenwise, and it really gives you some outstanding pinks. I mean, this tree has that Higashiyama style variegation, but when in the springtime, when this tree first leaves out, the entire leaf is pink with little green veins in the leaf. And it's way more pink than it is green. And it's a true treat to see this tree opening up almost like popcorn in the early spring.
Yeah, that name's just a play on words there. Eye Candy. It's spelled I-K-A-N-D-I, but it's not Ramonji for sure. It's more like, hey, check out that eye candy. So great tree going on there. Really colorful. We actually have a sister seedling to this that stays really white. We're evaluating right now. Really a cool one, though. I'm a huge fan of what this brings to the table. Some of the best shades of pink, I would say, of the Higashiyama style reticulation. And it's a good plant. It tends to be very multi-stemmed for us. Leafing this one out slowly will give you your best colors. So if you're leafing it out very quickly in a high heat environment, sometimes that can mute eye candy down a little bit. But as the tree matures and you get kind of some older growth, that helps. But the more it slows down, the more intense the color is.
So guys, we mentioned Guy Malot from France earlier. He's got a large collection of Japanese maples in France. The next selection, number 21, is one of his introductions, Kawahara Rose. And Kawahara Rose in the springtime when it leaves out is a really nice shade of pink red. And that's not actually where this tree gets its name, though. To me, the summer flush is amazing. And that pink color goes to a green, but the summer flushes are bright pink red again over top of that. And that's when it looks like roses coming over top of a rose bush. And that's where it gets the name of Kawahara Rose. And the pinks that this tree gives on this are very unique, that pink red color, and it's really special.
Yeah, it's another one I think that benefits a great deal from its secondary color of yellow. I think some of those lime green to yellow kind of etching you get through the middle of the leaf really accentuates that pink and brightens it. This one's typically at 6 to 8 foot, even in 10 years. It's another one that's going to work zones 5 through 9, as most of our palmatums on this list will. But an excellent tree to be growing. Another one I think is underrated for bonsai. I know we're talking about pink trees, but again, if the Sojo is going to get all the love, definitely consider Kawahara Rose. That's a great candidate with a similar style foliage and really good grower. I think you would get some of the flashiest shades out of this. But as Tim mentioned, my favorite thing about this one is the secondary flushes. I think that late summer flush really adds to what this cultivar brings. You kind of get more diversity of color even within the tree itself because of that. And it really contrasts with that older growth and really gives it a distinctive look.
Yeah, I mean, Japanese maples are all about ever-changing beauty, and Kawahara Rose definitely does that. It constantly changes throughout the season, but with each season, you keep getting some pink returning into this plant. And because of that, this is a plant you're going to really enjoy having in the landscape and garden.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 20 on our top 25 pink list is Hinotorinishki.
Guys, this is a flaming pink in the spring. I mean, it is outstanding. The name Hinotorinishki is said to translate as firebird. This thing is a rock star with a true pink and a fairly consistent pink for us each and every year. I'd kind of fit it in that Coraline group with some of those plants like Wilson's pink and some of those other bright pinks in the early spring. But this one to me is one of the most consistent and one of the longer lasting pinks of any of those styles.
Now, Hinotorinishki is a great selection by one of our good friends, Dick Vandermatt. Now, Dick Vandermatt's a nurseryman in Holland that's named several amazing trees. I'd say he's got a great eye for pink ones as well. Excellent cultivar. This one's typically going to range from 7 to 8 feet in that 10-year span. And honestly, I could argue this up higher on our list. It's insanely pink. It's intensely pink. It doesn't last for forever, so maybe that's a good disqualifier to put it down all the way at 20. But when it's pink, wow, it is super pink.
So guys, coming at number 9, we've got another pink Coraline style. This time, this one's introduction by Esfeld Nursery. This is Acer palmatum Reuben.
Yeah, I think Reuben's actually the name of Cor van Geldren's son. I think at the time I saw Reuben, I was visiting Esfeld Plantinium there in Holland, and he said, this is the only tree I've ever named him after a guy. So it was Reuben was one of his boys there, and an excellent tree. Acer palmatum Reuben is a showstopper in the landscape. It's one we tend to offer, I would say, a good bit here at Mr. Maple. We've kind of helped popularize this one in America, and I think it's an excellent tree to be growing. I like its small habit. I like its fullness. The overall shape of it isn't pendulous, but it tends to be wider and multi-stem, so it kind of gives it an interesting shape to the overall plant. And wow, I mean, for pinks, it's hard to beat that.
Yeah, we can get from baby pink to coral pink out there in the landscape and garden. And I saw on Esfeld's site an interesting way to grow this one, and they had it in a mass planting. And I don't know if this was at Western Bird Arboretum or at Esfeld Plantinium, but there was 5 or 6 Reubens in a row. And when those things went to that pink spring color, that bright pink spring color, it was just an outrageous statement in the landscape because of how much pink there was on different trees in a coordinated pattern.
Now, sometimes you get more of a red on this one in the fall, but I've also seen it be an excellent kind of shade of pink in the fall. I think when I was visiting Esfeld, these were actually in more of a shade of pink for that fall color, which really I thought stood out. You do get some greening midsummer for sure on this one, kind of pink blushes over top of that one, but really a fun one in the landscape. Now, one tree we've helped popularize here is Kristen Star, and I think it makes a perfect pairing with Reuben.
Yeah, I would say so too. One thing to note about Reuben is it does get much wider than it does tall. Mm-hmm. So it is more shrub-like in its habit. And that really just makes it one of these spring flowering shrubs where the foliage itself is the flower of that bright pink spring color.
All right, coming in here at number 18, guys, we've got Cotton Candy.
Cotton Candy.
Sweet and low, let me see you Tootsie Roll. All right, Cotton Candy is an amazing hot pink variegated selection. It's one of the most intense pinks that you have on that Hinotorinishki style variegation. It's actually, we did a pruning video on how to exaggerate your variegation by pruning in mid to late March, right before they leafed out. And Cotton Candy is one of the ones we used for that example. It is an intense style of hot to soft pink over top of lime green to white.
Now, on that style variegation, this is one, like Matt mentioned, that you can trim back to promote more and more variegation. This is one that you can get so pink that the entire leaves on the tree, on many of the leaves, are solid pink itself. So you can literally have solid pink foliage on a big part of the tree. And that's the reason why this plant gets that name of cotton candy, because it looks almost like cotton candy that you'd get out at a carnival. This is just such an amazing plant to put out there in the landscape. My favorite time for many of this style of a variegation, especially cotton candy, is that June to July. That's when you're going to this plant puts on its most exaggerated variegation. When their first flush of growth often has some green foliage to it, but that secondary flush has more and more pinks and whites than any other time of the season.
Yeah, another introduction by the late Del Alks. This is one of his last introductions. He's made this list several times, so he certainly had an eye for some amazing pink selections. Cotton candy was named there by Dell's Maples, and just a really good plant. I first got this when visiting them, and I really fell in love with the color patterns it had, and I was just really impressed. There's several of these types that are in a Hinotorinishki style, and so I'm a little bit more critical of those when I see them. Like, it really needs to stand out and be something special. And this one really brought it. I mean, the color pattern on it was intense, and it definitely had its place amongst those styles.
So, guys, coming at number 17, we've got Acer Palmatum Hanasukasa. This is a very Higashiyama style variegation where you get that pink spring color with green veining. But this one has a tighter, compact habit. That means this tree is going to be much slower growing, and it is excellent for bonsai because of that. I mean, Shin Hakasa, think of it almost as Higashiyama X, like a Goshiki Kotohime or a X Makawa. I mean, it's in that realm of category because it does have much tighter nodes between the leaves, and that just gives it a very compact, dense habit that makes that Higashiyama style leaf with that pink variegation so showy.
Yeah, I love the leaf on this one too. It's a very curled, ruffled leaf, gives it a very regal appearance. One of the more compact dwarf variegated plants. I love what this one does, whether it's in the container garden, in a bonsai, or in the small area garden. Makes the perfect deciduous variegated splash in a conifer bed as well. So if you're looking to brighten up an area, that's a fun one. I love what it brings to the table. You can get some high, intense shades of pink on this one. If you give it early morning sun with late day shade, you can hold some of those pink shades later into the season. But it's got a ruffled, regal leaf that I really think gives it something extra. The lobes on this cultivar are elongated, but also kind of curled, and it just gives it a little something extra going on there on top of all those colors.
I mean, it is an extremely colorful plant. That's one of my favorite styles of pink of almost any of the Japanese maples is that Higashiyama style. And to get that in that tighter, compact habit, it is just superb. So guys, coming in at number 16, we've got, as Yano describes it, one of the best variegated Japanese maples to ever exist, Acer Palmatum Hanamatoi.
If Yano-san's putting it up there, maybe we should have marked it up a little higher. This is a highly intense pink on red, variegated lace leaf. We love Hanamatoi. We've searched for years. You probably heard this story, but it bears repeating every time because I don't think that, these definitions are often lost in translation. There's so many definitions, especially for cultivars that are Japanese. And we try our best as American nurserymen. I know J.D. Veritrees tried his best sometimes, and you find out that the translations he thought weren't exactly the same at all. And so with Hanamatoi, we thought for forever, maybe this meant like Hana means flower, and like maybe means like you're like kind of the essence of a flower. We kept looking for what this meant. One of our first trips to Japan, we sat down with Yanada Tanaka of Tsukasa Maple. We were actually getting on the plane, and Yanada Tanaka had emailed us and said, guys, I won't be able to provide a translator, so I'm not sure that I'll be able to meet with you. And so we were a little heartbroken, but we were visiting Masayoshi Yano, and through our translator, Yano-san said he would love to meet with you. He just wants to make sure he has a translator so that it's worth the time for both of you. We couldn't have been happier to hear that. So we got a translator to travel with us to visit Yanada Tanaka, and he explained to us that a matoi is basically like a totem that they carried around in the Edo period for the firefighters. So that was kind of like make way. The firefighters are coming through, and it describes perfectly that shape of kind of like a standard lace leaf with something weeping down from it. So you kind of have a matoi, especially if you have one of these on a high graph. But you have that weeping shape of flowers dangling down from a matoi style totem. And it's something that they would carry out in front of the firefighters to basically warn everybody. And these were the guys that were really like major heroes of this time period. They, a lot of the homes are made of paper and thin and there's everything's wooden. So these fires were huge trouble in the Edo period. So, the firefighters were kind of like the heroes of the samurai even. Those were the guys that everybody looked up to. And I thought it was cool he paid homage to that piece of history with the name Hanamatoi.
Now, Matois are still used in a lot of celebrations today. They're kind of like a big mop-like totem. So that gives you the exact presence of a weeping lace leaf that has that flower-like image with Hanamatoi. I mean, it's a perfect name for the plant once you know what that means. And it's a rock star plant out in the garden. Now, this is a plant that we always try to make sure that our Hanamatois are grafted from the best variegated wood. And it takes as Yano's book says, you have to take very special, precise measures to be able to produce this one correctly. And that's because if you graft this from an unvariegated form, an unvariegated Hanamatoi, you don't get Hanamatoi. If you graft it from a variegated Hanamatoi where the variegation is, that's when you'll really have the best variegation on this selection. And that pink on red is really, I think, is at its peak and its best interest when you're growing this in more sunlight. I mean, if you're growing this in more shade, you get a lot more greens in there with some pink in it. But if you put it in the sunlight, you really get some really nice shades of red with that pink variegation.
All right, coming in at number 15, we've got Acer palmatum Kotobuki.
Kotobuki. Now, this is a Japanese drama, and this plant brings the drama to the garden. I mean, that's what Kotobuki is. And it just puts on lots of pink, and it's noted for having some of the most pink of any of the Hinotorinishki styles, but not just like that baby pink. We're talking like a pink-red pink on that Hinotorinishki style. And that's the reason why I love this plant, because you get splotches of pink, swirls of pink, all throughout this green, upright Japanese maple. And you even get pink swirling in the bark as well.
I like that this one's very multi-stemmed as well. It tends to be a very rounded canopy. In a 10-year period, Kotobuki is typically about 6 feet tall by about 5 feet wide, giving it a nice spread to it. And it gives you that multi-stemmed approach, gives you a high intensity for color, because when you've got a multi-stemmed tree with this much pink in it, it really has a nice sized canopy and it really shows off what it can do well. I'm a huge fan of this one. Gosh, the colors are spectacular. It may be the pinkest of all of those Hinotorinishki style variegations. It's definitely one of the top candidates of that style, and I'm a huge fan of it. It's really, really colorful. Looks great in the container because that multi-stemmed approach to it. You can grow this as a single leader tree as well, but I think it's kind of at its best when it's kind of spread out and looking really full.
Guys, coming in at number 14, we've got Acer palmatum Naniwa Benny.
Dang, this one's a good one. I mean, that is, it makes my heart stop a little bit on that one. That is a great plant. That color is incredible. One of the most intense pinks. Another one that benefits from that secondary color of lime greens and yellows because it really intensifies the colors that you'll see on Naniwa Benny. Not common, especially in the United States. It's a very rare cultivar. We're offering it more and more here, but it's not one you see typically in the United States. The colors, gosh, it is some of the most intense, flashy shades you'll ever see.
I know this is one that Matt loves, and that's the reason I was letting him describe it, because every time he sees this plant, he's like, Tim, we've got to get this tree more in production. Tim, have we grafted this plant yet? Have we got this tree in production yet more this year? And he's constantly pushing me with Naniwa Benny, and we've got it on the way. We've got this tree in production, but this plant is outstanding in its colors and that springtime. I mean, it's a rock star. And when you see this plant out there in the garden, it gets your heart a-thumping.
Similar to Kawahara Rose, this can fade a little bit midsummer and get to more of a green coloration with like bright pink new growth. Different shade going on here. Maybe one of the more hot pink selections on our list here. So there's different shades of pink, even within that, but definitely a truly intense color, and one we look forward to offering again here at MrMaple, Naniwa Benny.
So guys, coming at number 13, we've got a selection, Acer palmatum Radiant. And this is just an outstanding cultivar that has a unique style of splotching and swirling variegation that gets you some really nice shades of pink in there to pink orange.
Yeah, Radiant is unique. I don't know that I'd even consider it in that Hinotorinishki style, but it is. I mean, it's almost like its own thing of that. It's got a high intensity to it. I'm a big fan of this one. The colors, can be also very intense in the bark. You get that chimeral variegation going on, so you get some white and pink swirling, that candy cane stripe it even in the bark. But the colors on this one, when it really lights up, can be some of the more intense shades you'll see of pink.
I remember seeing this tree in the early spring, and it's hard to beat Radiant in that springtime when you see those pinks oranges, and creams swirling on the green foliage. It is so intense, and it has so much splotching, with not just the splotching and the swirls, but also that sand dust style variegation in there as well. It just grabs your attention.
Now, this one may or may not be the same tree as Cosmo. There's been some legal debates on that one. I know that some people say that Radiant is an improvement on Cosmo. They certainly share some similar genetics. As you'll see, some people selling Radiant and Cosmo at the same time, and I think they're probably pretty close together.
Now, the Hinotorinishki style, this is its own thing, but when you prune back an Hinotorinishki style plant, you get a more variegated type from it. And this more variegated sport on Cosmo that became Radiant might have just been that as well. It may have just been someone pruning it back heavy and then more variegation coming out. I mean, that's very common when it comes in the nursery trade.
There's a lot of debate there, and I'll let the legal experts figure that one out. But if you're growing Radiant and Cosmo, you may have a very similar plant for sure.
Now, guys, coming in at number 12, we have another cool variegated lace leaf. We've got Acer Palmatum, Pink Ballerina.
Now, I actually got to go and visit Junker Nursery in the UK. It was such a fun experience. I got out there. I was driving around, first off, on the wrong side of the road for me, being from North Carolina. And first time internationally traveling, went and visited Peter Gregory. And I said, I'm going to go visit Junker Nursery. That's a cool nursery. And Karen Junker was so kind to me. She showed me around. I believe her son, Tristan, who was, this was over 10 years ago. He was just a little boy then. I believe he's now running the place. Really cool family, though. Super nice. They walked me around their arboretum, and kind of was a crazy trip. I got lost leaving their place, and I was kind of traveling through some Lord of the Rings looking territory, basically driving through some caves and some roadsides. It was just me and quails and windstorms at one point, and sheep. But anyway, I say all that to say they named Pink Ballerina at their nursery. Excellent cultivar. This one is different than Hanamatoi, although they do share some obvious similarities. My experience has been that Pink Ballerina can be a little darker on the dark red, especially if you're giving it more sun, and it certainly is more dwarf, but it's going to be a very similar style pink on dark red lace leaf.
But with a name like Pink Ballerina, it's no wonder it falls high on our list. It's a more dwarf and compact form of something like a Hanamatoi that holds its color, that darker red color, a little bit better than Hanamatoi does. But, I mean, it's an amazing small Japanese maple. A little more rare in the nursery trade. You don't see Pink Ballerina as often as you see Hanamatoi. But I think a lot of that is because Pink Ballerina is slower growing, and Hanamatoi made it to the market first.
Hanamatoi certainly has more vigor. I mean, there's something to be said about that. There's always a benefit to slower growing trees. But I think if you do want something that gets out there and makes a presence, Hanamatoi does fill out faster. There's give and take with both. I'm always impressed at how dark the dark red gets on this one. I've got one in the ground. It's been very slow to get large, but Pink Ballerina certainly brings high intensity pinks. And for that reason, coming in at number 12 on our list.
Coming in at number 11, we've got Acer Palmatum, Hanasukasa. This is a selection by Tsukasa Maple, our friend Yataka Tanaka at Tsukasa Maple. And Hana means flower, and Tsukasa is the name of the nursery.
Yeah, Tsukasa, I believe, is actually his father's name as well, that he named it after. And just a great guy. Again, we couldn't talk enough about Yonata Tanaka and how kind he is with his time. Hanasukasa is another one sometimes when people are looking for Taylor that I'll recommend because it's a little more durable than Taylor, and it's got that high intensity, high pink ceiling. I mean, it's one of the pinkest plants you can be growing. I'm a huge fan of the way it colors up. I mean, this one you can get just some unreal shades of that baby pink to high intensity pink.
Now, the foliage itself is a little bit longer and thinner than something like Benishishihenga, but in the springtime when this thing first leaves out, I mean, it can give you some really, really bright pink colors, then fading to a green with pink margins. And the pink margins are still predominantly very showy, even then in the early spring.
Now, I love that color pattern on Hanasukasa, but it's another one that stays a little smaller too, which is nice. Typically at around 6 to 8 feet, even in 10 years. And I'd say it's more close to that 6 foot range, typically by about 5 feet wide, making it more of a small ball shape. That's how I like to see this one grown. It's a great one for that candidate for container gardening because you can kind of play around with the sunlight for this one. Giving it some early morning sun is going to brighten your pinks up, but it's also going to hold that crazy bright pink color longer into the season.
So guys, we're coming into the top 10 pink Japanese maples. Now, these aren't our top 10 favorite Japanese maples. These are just the top 10, the most pink Japanese maples that's out there. And we've got some awesome plants in this top 10. We've went from 50 down to 10. Guys, if you're listening this in the live chat on YouTube, y'all can get involved and talk about, what y'all think might be coming on in this top 10. Because there's some really cool plants coming out. I mean, what do you think, Matt?
Oh, there's some classics here. So some of the most flashy Japanese maples you'll ever see. So go ahead and jumping into it. Coming in at number 10, we've got Acer palmatum Coraline. Now, Coraline's a beautiful color, and I like the shape of this one a good bit too. At 4 to 6 foot tall by about 4 to 6 foot wide, typically a little bit wider than it is tall. You get some really cool shapes on this one. I mean, it kind of grows a little bit like Acer palmatum Oregon Sunset. You get this low, wide tree with an irregular shape. I think it's a classic one for bonsai for that reason as well. Coraline really brings it with the pink, though. You get a very intense, full pink color.
Now, something often makes me, when I hear these names that are kind of Latin, I wonder, is this something that was introduced in Europe or is this found in Japan? And is there a real name behind this plant that was in Japan at one point? And that's something I just don't know with Coraline that just piques my interest. But Coraline just has that rounded shape in the early spring that has that pink color. I know Tom Cox had 2 of these in his garden along the driveway coming down Cox Arboretum and Gardens. And it was one of his favorite plants. I mean, he loved enjoying that plant along the side of his garden because of the intense pink color that Coraline would provide in the early spring. And you can get some pinks to coral pinks on this tree that are just outrageous.
Oh, great plant to be growing, guys. It's one that is equally as good in the ground or in the container garden. Another one that secondary summer flush is really nice on too. I mean, you get kind of a light Kelly green, and then you get these soft pink hues going on over top of that, especially in that summer heat. And it's just an added color in a unique time frame that kind of gives you a little bit of that flower essence going on, in that shrub-like appearance for the tree.
Now, Coraline is extremely popular for containers, small places in the garden, but also for bonsai. I mean, the Coraline is an amazing plant because of its compact shape that it does do great in that bonsai style. It makes a great companion plant to DeSojo, and it's one that is often mentioned in many of the bonsai books. This plant, a rock star in the garden with that smaller foliage and great spring color.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 9, we've got Acer Rubinsons Red Flamingo. Now, the bark is red on this one, but the foliage has the pink. It is a really intense variegated snake bark maple that has green splotching, I would say ordained with some great pink shades. There's definitely some cream and some white in there, but that pink is kind of the hue you get overall on the plant. It kind of blushes a whole pink hue over top of the green. And I think all around, maybe it's the red bark, but it really just gives you this real pink vibe to it.
I love the shape of the snake bark foliage. The shape of the snake bark foliage is more elongated than your typical palmatum leaf. And when it has this with so much pink variegation in the early spring, as this tree is leafing out, I mean, it is really that red pink that makes you think of flamingos. And the names fits this so well, but the pink that this thing puts on is simply crazy. Now, snake barks, they want to make sure they've got good drainage out in the landscape and garden. I often find them find somewhere with a little bit of shade and give them something to lean on. Here in West North Carolina, where we're at, we have Acer pennsylvanicum, which is a native snake bark. And that's often where you find Acer pennsylvanicum in the wild, is on the sides of mountains where there's plenty of good drainage, leaning on something else.
Now, this one was found by W.J. Hoofman Nursery there in Holland and is a great selection, typically at around 9 to 12 feet in a 10-year span. Conditions can change for that and can change the growth rate a good bit. Typically, late day shade is going to be your friend within your snake barks, especially in some of your hotter climates. Late day shade is going to give them some relief and really help them grow well. Red Flamingo is so showy, though. I love the fall color as well. I actually have a picture of this in fall color, and you start to get some green still going on, but everything else on the leaf besides the green can get to an intense shade of pink. And I think that's one of the more fun stages for this. Oftentimes, the green part will actually get to a little bit more of a red, so you get a red on pink. But just so showy and so colorful, had to make our list. It's one of my favorite snake barks, especially for the pink.
Guys, coming in at number 8 on our top pink maples is Acer palmatum baldsmith. Now, this is a lace leaf that gives you some intense pink-purple colors that keep flushing all across this plant throughout the season. In the springtime, you get some amazing pink colors that are unreal, that stand out against all the other lace leaf Japanese maples. And then as that pink-purple starts to fade down to green, you keep having that pink-purple new growth towards the top of the new growth on this Japanese maple. It just gives it some unreal colors.
I think this at number 8 is our top lace leaf on our list, and for good reason. I think it's one of the most intense pink lace leaves you can be growing. I'm a huge fan of this one. I think, you could have put Chantilly lace in here as well. I think baldsmith beat it out slightly because that holds that color a little longer. Really almost a little bit more intense shade if you compared them at their peak of pink. But yeah, great plant. Baldsmith, super showy. Makes a perfect pairing if you have some green lace leaves or red lace leaves in the landscape. You can really see that diversity of color when you compare this to something like Tamukiyama, because it looks nothing like that. I mean, you're looking at maroon shades and then high intense pink shades, typically at around 5 feet tall, but about 6 feet wide. Makes a perfect lace leaf. If you're giving this one early morning sun, late day shade, you'll hold that pink color longer into the season. I find if you're putting this one in a ton of sun, you will wash out that color in that early June timeframe a little quicker. You still get some amazing shades of green with bright pink new growth going on top of that, but it will wash that color out a little bit quicker in heavy sun.
I just keep laughing to myself because recently we did a cultivar highlight on this, and Matt said that this was introduced by Bartholomew Smith, who was a blacksmith who was bald. And I just know somebody's going to not catch his sarcasm in that and think that is the true history behind Baldsmith.
You're going to go look up Baldsmith, and there's going to be a website that just knocked us off from that video. And it's going to say Bartholomew Smith, the blacksmith who was bald, named Baldsmith. So be careful what you knock off from our channel if you're listening.
Matt was totally being sarcastic, and I hope people catch that sarcasm, but somebody's going to miss that. I just know it. So coming in at number 7, we've got Acer, and this is scoochia.
This is a funky one.
Acer scoochia. That's a Mexican sugar maple. Tequila Sunrise.
Oh man, guys, this thing's crazy. The color on this is nuts. It does fade to a green, but it leaves out just shiny, glossy pink. It is really fun. Being a sugar maple, it can handle a little bit of sun, especially Acer scoochii, which is a subspecies there. Rare plant to see in propagation, rare plant to see a cultivar of that species. Tequila Sunrise, what a fun plant. I'm a huge fan of this one. We'll definitely be offering it here at Mr. Maple. Just some really interesting overall shades. And I think maybe one of the pinkest ones on this list. I mean, I know it's at number 7, but man, when it's pink, it's really, really, really pink.
Now, Acer scoochii is the cloud forest maple. It grows in the cloud forest of Mexico. So it grows up in the higher elevations, and that's where they have some of their native sugar maples in Mexico. They're extremely endangered. There's only, I think, 3 to 5 populations, something like that, in Mexico. And because of deforestation, these populations are dwindling. And so it's actually an endangered species. And then they found this pink selection of that is just unreal on its pink colors. I know that it's just crazy. I know around the same time frame as this one was selected, Matt and I also found a white form, and we called it El Chupacabra. But the problem with our name is it actually worked like El Chupacabra. We took a photo of it once. I can't really find that photo anymore. It was blurry.
And then it disappeared.
And then the tree disappeared.
It was a variegated Acer scoochia. But I love seeing cultivars of these get out there. You know, Dr. Creech, we had on our podcast before, has really helped popularize Acer scoochii by sending seedlings all over the world. And Tequila Sunrise, look for that one coming, guys. It's a fun one.
And guys, that's not to be confused with Tequila Sunset, which is a red with orange variegation by Del Laux Nursery. Very uncommon, but that's another plant that's out there with a similar name.
All right, guys, how do we go up from there? Well, we'll show you. At number 6, we've got Acer palmatum Geisha.
Guys, I fell in love with this plant when Matt and I visited Buckholt's nursery for the very first time. Talon had a huge Geisha in a box there at his nursery. And when I walked up to it, it was just a pink display that was unreal. And it's all pink with little flecks of like a darker red to green in that pink. I mean, as a compact little small tree, Geisha is one of the pinkest Japanese maples out there completely. And it is outstanding. It's a very unusual plant because it has so much pink variegation to it. Now, often this plant will throw on these unusual sports that sickle with that more red color. And that is something that's very common. It's almost a characteristic of Geisha itself. This is a plant that has sported and produced other cultivars that we'll talk about a little bit later. But Geisha is an outstanding tree. You want to make sure you give it good drainage, but it makes an excellent container plant.
Now, this one ranges from a lot of different colors of pink. If you're giving it some early morning sun, this one's going to have more of a hot pink early. It does quickly fade to more of a pastel, kind of a baby pink, and a unique shape to this one as well. It's also going to be a dwarf one at around 4 feet tall, typically about 4 feet wide as well in 10 years. So you get more of a rounded ball shape on this. The sports, when isolated, interestingly enough, make more tree forms. This tree wants to be more of a compact, dense form. You definitely want to protect this one from the hot afternoon sun. In general, the more pink or the more white you have on a Japanese maple, the more late day shade they're going to need to hold those colors. Pink is often assisted by having a little bit of morning sun, though, to kind of pick that up.
So, guys, we're coming to the top 5 pink Japanese maples. Go ahead, guys, make your list. The top 5 pink Japanese maples. We're breaking number 5 with Acer Palmatum Pink Princess.
Huge fan of Pink Princess. First off, we picked the name out here ourselves, but this was found by our good friend Carl Munn as a broom in Benny Shishihinga there at his nursery. Now, Benny Shishihinga was already on our list, and that one has that intense pink on green. I found Pink Princess to hold its color longer than Benny Shishihinga, which I found to be incredible. The color stayed a little bit later into the season. It's going to have a really regal look with that small, compact broom. So think of this one as like Matthew or Shayna times Benny Shishihinga color. It did hold its color later into the season for us, though, each season than Benny Shishihinga.
The other thing that I found really interesting about Pink Princess is that the witch's broom has changed this plant. The foliage is smaller than the actual Benny Shishihinga. Mm-hmm. It has a compact, more dense form, but it also appears to be more stable in its variegation. Benny Shishihinga can often throw some reverted shoots when fertilized. So far, haven't seen much reversion at all on Pink Princess.
Yeah, I've never had a graft revert from grafted material. I had a few revert from the original broom, and those were isolated, but I've never had a single graft revert off of what became the cultivar Pink Princess. So excellent for its durability, excellent for its stability, showy. Because of that broom-like habit, this is going to be a great candidate for container gardens, small area gardens, where you want some high intensity. Early morning sun's going to brighten that pink up. Late day shade's going to hold it longer into the season.
And we had Billy Schwartz here this past weekend, and I was talking with Billy Schwartz, and he couldn't think of another Japanese maple that was a witch's broom on a variegated Japanese maple.
Yeah, we were once, I don't know if it was at IPPS or one of the plant conferences. It might have been one of the things we were speaking at for the Southern Nurseryman Association. And Barry Yinger was at dinner with us. And, famous plantsman Barry Yinger, he was talking about how it's so rare to find a plant that's a broom and a sport, because a sport typically can be variegated. That's one of the forms of sports. But it's so rare for a tree to be a sport and then also have a broom on that also. There were very few instances of that in the whole plant world. We thought of 2 or 3, but Pink Princess is an anomaly in that it's the only one I know of that's a broom and variegated for a Japanese maple. Makes it super special, and one that definitely had to be on our list. I've got 2 little girls, so Pink Princess probably had that in mind when naming that when Carolina was being born. Huge fan of what that one does. That really colorful.
Yeah, and I think the other one that we talked about was Peve Maribo, but it happened opposite. It was a witch's broom, American, and then it had a variegated sport on it.
Right.
Where instead of being a variegated plant that was then a witch's broom. So really rare for it to happen, especially that on a Japanese maple. So guys, coming in at number 4, we've got an awesome plant. This is one of our favorite Japanese maples.
We never talk about this one ever.
Ever.
Yeah, we've got Acer palmatum Lillians Jewel. You probably get tired of us talking about this. We talk about it a ton. We offer it a ton. We love this plant. We help make it popular. Named by our good friend Jonathan Savlich, grandson of Del Laux. So they're making that list again here with their introductions. Don't confuse this one with Extravaganza. That's not the correct name. Not Little Annie's Jewel. The original name is Lillian's Jewel. That's the correct name. I've actually met Lillian. She's a sweet little girl who's grown up now and an adult as well. It's crazy. I'm talking about people's kids. I'm starting to feel old because I remember when their kids were young. And I'm only 41, but I'm looking at some of these lists. I'm like, she's like, a teenager now. So Lillian, sweet little girl there who this tree was named after. One of the very best pink on red variegates you'll ever see. We love it for its durability, but also its stability. Lillian's Jewel holds its color better than any of the other pink on red variegated styles like this.
And a lot of the variegated styles that have this unique, irregular variegation really require a lot of special cultural practices in going in and cutting out any of the reversion constantly on selections like Rainbow, Fujinami-nishiki, Tama-nishiki, Hinotorinishki, and the one I mentioned earlier, that Tequila Sunset. All of those are very heavily unstable, but Lillian's Jewel appears to be extremely stable. We do thousands of this and have very few plants that actually revert all the way back to the original form.
Yeah, Yano in Book of Maples uses that term, certain cultural practices. I'm like, yeah, a hard pair of pruners. You got to prune out all one color. That's the cultural practice needed. Maintaining the shape of the tree as secondary to the color of the tree. That's really what it boils down to.
But Lillian's Jewel has proven to us to be extremely heat tolerant. One of our good friends, Richard Bomar, was growing this in full sun in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Brian Rule attested to this heat tolerance of Lillian's Jewel in Oklahoma for him whenever he was out in Oklahoma. This is a plant that is very durable, makes a good sized tree, not really a fast, super fast grower, but a good mid-sized tree in that 8 to 10 foot in height and in 10 years. And it's just an awesome tree all the way around with red on pink variegation. Now, if you grow this tree in a deeper shaded situation, you may get some greens with pink variegation. That pink variegation late in the summer will turn more white. But to me, this is just one of the most amazing trees.
Yeah, we offer it here a lot, and for good reason. We're a big fan of this introduction, and it's just quality. It's a quality plant. I think if you're looking for a flashy Japanese maple that brings the pink, hard to look further than Lillian's Jewel. Now let's get into our top 3 here. It's getting heated. These are some of the most pink Japanese maples, so they've made this list. Coming in here at number 3, Japanese Princess.
So Japanese Princess, I mean, we said that this makes our list because of the most pink, but this is, to me, is one of the coolest pink trees.
Right.
And it has that twisting foliage on a Makawa style with amazing pink color in the early spring. And I've seen this tree rocket out from being intense pink to coral pink. I mean, Japanese Princess is by far one of my favorite pink Japanese maples of them all. And it's because of that pink spring color and being one of the first variations on Japanese maple to add that extra color on a Makawa Yatsubusa.
Guys, this one's super colorful. Now, you've heard us tell about this one before. It's by our friend Talon Buchholz. I'm a huge fan of this one. You can change the color a good bit, though, from sun to shade conditions. If you have this one in a sunnier condition, you'll get your most intense, high intense, bright neon pinks. Now, if you're growing it in shade, you will hold that color longer, but you won't get to quite the same spectacle of pink. You'll get some crazy soft pinks over what we like to call kind of a blonding color. It's an interesting overall habit. It can actually get some swirling variegation looks in it, but it doesn't stabilize. It tends to just be a characteristic of Japanese Princess. It's a showstopper whether you're growing it in sun or shade. It's heavily durable in each condition and a great candidate for container gardening because it keeps a smaller stature than even Makawa Yatsubusa at typically only around 3 to 4 feet tall in 10 years.
Yeah, Japanese Princess, one of our favorite Japanese maples with that pink dwarf compact shape. I mean, this is a tree that I fell in love with, and it's a plant that I just can't keep producing enough of. It sells out really quickly every time we list it on Mr. Maple. Many of these plants that we're talking about today in this top 25 list and our top 50 list may not be currently available on MrMaple.com, but you can often go and find that cultivar page in our MrMaple Files, and you can go through and click notify me, plug in your email address, and we'll notify you when that tree becomes available. But we also list 10 new plants every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. So if you sign up for our weekly emails, a lot of these plants will be coming back available through that 10 a.m. listing each and every Tuesday. But guys, coming in, we're coming up to number 2. We've got Acer Palmatum, Geisha Gone Wild.
All right, so we had to talk about how we're making this one above Geisha. And the reason is because it gets bigger, so it's pinker. So it's got more pink to it because it gets a lot taller. Interestingly enough, the sport from Geisha, Geisha Gone Wild, and Shiraz by default is also a sport from Geisha. Same origin. They're both, originate as sports off of Geisha, but they have different origin points. So they come from different places. Shiraz was found as a sport on Geisha in New Zealand. Geisha Gone Wild found as a sport on Geisha in Oregon by our friend Talon Buckholtz. Share a lot of similarities if grown in the same conditions, but unique tree. Geisha Gone Wild coming in here at number 2. Intense pink on dark red. I'm a huge fan of what this one does. We try to keep this in stock always. I mean, I know it's your wife's favorite tree. It's one we try to keep in stock because it brings everything you want from that flash level. It's one of those trees that people hadn't seen it before. It just has that shock factor. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Today, I was driving around my sister-in-law and my niece and nephews around, and this is on my wife's side. And I was driving them around and just showing them the nursery. And I pulled up to Hillstone Arboretum, our uncle's house. And she looked through the gate and she said, "What in the world is that pink tree?"
Right.
And it was a Geisha Gone Wild. And Geisha Gone Wild can handle the sun where Geisha needs some protection from the hot afternoon sun. And Geisha Gone Wild makes a much larger tree out in the landscape. And therefore, it adds more pink to your garden. Right. I mean, from a distance, this tree will look just as pink as Geisha does. You walk up closer, you start to realize that it does have some red variegation in the plant during this early springtime. But Geisha Gone Wild is one of my favorite pink Japanese maples. And it's just so pink and outrageous that it grabs everyone's attention, including my sister-in-law who, she doesn't know that much about Japanese maples. She just looked over there and said, "What is that pink tree?"
People have a knee-jerk reaction to this one. It's a fun plant. It pairs well with anything. Obviously, Tim's going to tell you to pair it with yellow because it's gorgeous. But this one, I like that it changed the shape of it a good bit too. Typically at around 8 foot in 10 years, it's much taller and more of an upright tree form, more of what you think of as a Japanese maple tree form than Geisha, which tends to be more of a globe shape. Awesome plant. I'm glad this Geisha went wild because I think it gave us something better, in my opinion, than the original Geisha. I like Geisha, but I do prefer Geisha Gone Wild to it. I think it's even more stable, more showy, and more useful in the landscape, I would say, for most people. Now, Geisha's got its place too in the landscape, but I think Geisha Gone Wild has a more broad appeal.
And when we're talking about Geisha Gone Wild, it's very similar to the cultivar Shiraz. Both are sports that happened off of Geisha. And this is a reoccurring sport that happens on Geisha, where it's a sport that is more upright, get some of that red into it with the pink margins. And Geisha Gone Wild was a selection by Talon Buckholtz. Shiraz also is the trademark name for Gwen's Rose Delight, which was found in New Zealand and introduced into the nursery trade by Stepping Stone Nursery. And so we've got 2 different sports all on different parts of the world. We've seen it happen as a sport in New Jersey. I've seen it happen in Washington. And I've also seen it happen here at our nursery where Geisha sports off into another Geisha Gone Wild like sport. The reason why Geisha Gone Wild is here rather than Shiraz mainly is because it's not patented.
Yeah, we're a big fan of this one. You got to respect the gymnastics that we pulled off here to get Geisha Gone Wild, the red variegated sport of Geisha above Geisha on the pink list. So I like that we come up with the mental gymnastics here, that it's a bigger tree, therefore it's got larger amounts of pink. Anyway, love that one though. Great plant. You got to be growing Geisha Gone Wild. Guys, coming in here at number 1, we've got Celebration. So Celebration, reticulated new ghost, spectacular colors. Talon Buckholtz told us when we got this plant from him, we were one of the first people to get to evaluate this. He said, "Guys, this may be the best introduction I've ever done." That was enough for me right there. I like to consider this one a truly pink version of Purple Ghost.
Celebrate good times. Come on. with a celebration that's a pink Japanese
Good
maple.
job. You actually got some lyrics right.
I know. I never get the lyrics right. Celebration just gives you some outrageous pink-red colors that are unlike any other Japanese maple. And it keeps putting on new growth flushes during the spring and the summer that continue to give color out in the landscape and garden. For a ghost-like variegation with that pink-red, this one is one of my favorite new Japanese maples to hit the market that we've been trying to produce the hound out of because it is such an amazingly pink plant, but it is so different from everything that's out there. It has more of an upright form than something like an Olson's Frosted Strawberry. It appears to be less finicky than something like an Olson's Frosted Strawberry, but it also just keeps giving some pink-red colors that are just outrageous.
You know, I think this one is reticulated, so it has that veining throughout it. But I think at its boldest, as the reason it made number one is it is the hottest pink of like the hot pink style maple. Like it is what you think of as like Barbie pink, right? I don't know a better name to call it, but it's bright pink. And it really, really shows out in the landscape. Because of that intensity of color and because of how long it holds it, it made number one on this list. It pairs well with everything in the landscape. If you're putting this near Jordans or some yellows, you know, the eyes are just going to bug out the contrast between those two. Celebration, one of the quintessential pink maples we do, and definitely one I think you should pick up on MrMaple.com.
Guys, so we've hit 50 through number one. You know, if you're able to put this in the comments section, go and tell us how you think we did. If it's something in our live chat on YouTube, you know, guys, you can go to our Mr. Maple Friends group on Facebook too and get involved in a conversation about what you think should have been in the top 50, what you think should have been the top 10 of these top pink maples. I mean, there's some cool ones on here you probably never heard of, like the Tequila Sunrise. And then there's some awesome plants that people need to have in their garden.
Hey, while you're in that Mr. Maple Friends group on Facebook, go ahead and throw some favorite pictures you have of pink Japanese maples in there. We love seeing that. Guys, we love bringing you a Mr. Maple talk show. This is something we do every single week where we talk about Japanese maples and gardening. We do interviews with some of the top gardening experts in the entire world. Internationally, we've got several international interviews and experts, whether it's on plant breeding, on specific fields for Japanese maples. We try to talk to everybody. We've even got garden design elements in our podcast. We love bringing these lists too. They're a lot of fun for me and Tim to put together. So definitely let us know if you agree with us and how you're wrong if you disagree.
I love how Matt phrases that stuff. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you shop with us on MrMaple.com if you love supporting our channel. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.